Sarah Thompson stood in the opulent living room of her family's San Francisco mansion, the cool marble floor beneath her bare feet a stark reminder of the wealth that surrounded her. She had lived in this house for as long as she could remember, every corner filled with memories of her adoptive parents, Jonathan and Rebecca Thompson. Today, however, was different. Today, she felt an unfamiliar weight in her chest as she sifted through the belongings of her recently deceased mother. Rebecca's passing had left a void in Sarah's heart, one that seemed impossible to fill. As she sorted through old photographs and trinkets, Sarah stumbled upon an old, weathered box tucked away at the back of her mother's walk-in closet. Curiosity piqued, she carefully opened it, revealing a collection of letters and documents tied together with a faded ribbon. One letter in particular caught her eye, its paper yellowed with age. The envelope was addressed to Rebecca Thompson, but the return address was unfamiliar. With trembling hands, Sarah unfolded the letter and began to read. "Dear Rebecca," it began, "I hope this letter finds you well. I am writing to inform you about Sarah's biological family. They are desperate to know about her well-being." Sarah's heart pounded as she read further, the words blurring together. The letter detailed how she had been adopted from a family living in a poor neighborhood on the other side of the city. It included the names of her biological parents, Maria and Carlos Rodriguez, and an address in the Mission District. For a moment, Sarah couldn't breathe. The room seemed to spin as she absorbed the revelation. Her entire life, she had believed herself to be the biological daughter of the Thompsons. The news hit her like a tidal wave, washing over her in waves of confusion and disbelief. "Why didn't they tell me?" she whispered, her voice barely audible in the silent room. She felt a mix of emotions, betrayal, anger, and a deep-seated curiosity about her true origins. How could Jonathan and Rebecca have kept such a monumental secret from her? Sarah knew she needed answers, and the only way to get them was to find the people who could provide them. That evening, Sarah confronted Jonathan in his study, the letter clutched tightly in her hand. Jonathan looked up from his work, his expression a mixture of surprise and apprehension. "Sarah, what is it?" he asked, sensing her agitation. She handed him the letter, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "Explain this," she demanded. Jonathan's face paled as he read the letter. He sighed heavily, setting the paper aside and looking at Sarah with a mixture of regret and sorrow. "We always planned to tell you, Sarah, but the right moment never seemed to come. We didn't want to upset you." "Upset me?" Sarah's voice rose. "How could you hide something so important from me? My whole life has been a lie." Jonathan reached out, but Sarah stepped back, her mind made up. "I need to know who I am, where I come from. I need to meet them." Jonathan nodded slowly, understanding the resolve in her eyes. "I won't stop you, Sarah. But please, be careful." Sarah spent the rest of the night lying awake in her room, her mind racing with questions. Who were Maria and Carlos? What would they be like? Would they even want to meet her after all these years? The next morning, with Jonathan's reluctant blessing, Sarah set out to find her biological family. The address from the letter was etched in her mind as she navigated through the bustling streets of San Francisco, leaving the comfort and familiarity of Pacific Heights behind. As she crossed into the Mission District, the contrast was stark. The grand houses and manicured lawns gave way to modest homes and vibrant street art. It was a different world, one that felt both foreign and oddly welcoming. Finally, she stood in front of a small, weathered house, her heart pounding in her chest. Taking a deep breath, she walked up to the door and knocked. The door opened, revealing a woman in her late 40s with kind eyes and a warm smile. "Can I help you?" she asked. Sarah's voice trembled as she spoke. "Maria Rodriguez?" The woman's eyes widened in recognition and shock. "Yes, I'm Maria. Who are you?" "I'm Sarah. I think I'm your daughter." Maria stood frozen in the doorway, her eyes searching Sarah's face as if trying to confirm what her ears had just heard. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she pulled Sarah into a tight embrace. My Sarah, Maria whispered, her voice choked with emotion. I never thought I'd see you again. The hug was both comforting and overwhelming for Sarah. She had imagined this moment countless times the night before, but reality felt far more intense than any scenario her mind had conjured. Slowly, they separated, and Maria invited Sarah inside. The interior of the house was modest but filled with warmth. Family photos lined the walls, and the scent of freshly baked bread lingered in the air. Maria led Sarah to a cozy living room, where a young man in his early 20s sat strumming a guitar. He looked up, curiosity and surprise evident in his eyes. Sarah, this is Carlos, your brother, Maria introduced, her voice trembling with joy. Carlos stood up, his guitar forgotten, and approached Sarah with a hesitant smile. I've heard so much about you, he said, his voice soft but filled with excitement. It's amazing to finally meet you. Sarah felt a connection immediately. Despite the years apart, there was an undeniable bond between them. They spent the afternoon talking, Maria and Carlos sharing stories about their lives and the family Sarah had never known. Maria recounted the painful decision to give Sarah up for adoption, tears streaming down her face as she spoke of the hope that Sarah would have a better life with the Thompsons. It was the hardest thing I ever did, but I wanted you to have opportunities we couldn't provide, Maria explained, her voice breaking. Sarah listened intently, her heart aching for the sacrifices her biological mother had made. She also shared her experiences growing up with the Thompsons, painting a picture of a life filled with privilege, but also a sense of something always missing. As the hours passed, Sarah felt a growing sense of belonging. This world, though so different from what she was used to, felt right. The simplicity, the love, the unspoken understanding between them, it was what she had been searching for. When evening came, Maria insisted on preparing a special dinner to celebrate their reunion. Sarah helped in the kitchen, a new but comforting experience. They laughed and talked, the initial awkwardness fading away. Carlos played his guitar, filling the house with music and joy. As they sat down to eat, Sarah realized how much she had missed this, the warmth of a family meal, the genuine conversations, the feeling of being part of something bigger than herself. It was a stark contrast to the often cold and formal dinners she had with Jonathan. The night ended with promises to meet again soon. Maria and Carlos walked Sarah to the door, their expressions a mix of happiness and a touch of lingering sadness. Thank you for coming, Sarah, Maria said, holding her daughter's hands tightly. This means more to us than you'll ever know. Sarah nodded, her eyes misty. Thank you for welcoming me. I feel like I've found a part of myself I didn't even know was missing. As Sarah walked back to her car, she felt a sense of fulfillment and clarity. She knew this was just the beginning of a long journey of reconciling her two worlds, but for the first time, she felt hopeful about the future. Driving back to Pacific Heights, Sarah's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. She knew that the path ahead wouldn't be easy. Jonathan's reaction, her own internal struggles, and the balancing act between two vastly different lives would present countless challenges. But today had shown her that it was worth it. She was determined to forge a connection with her biological family while navigating the complexities of her adoptive world. With a renewed sense of purpose, Sarah entered her home, ready to face whatever came next. Sarah woke up the next morning with a sense of anticipation and anxiety. The previous day's emotional reunion with her biological family lingered in her mind, bringing both comfort and confusion. She knew she needed to talk to Jonathan about what had happened, but the prospect filled her with dread. After breakfast, Sarah found Jonathan in his study, engrossed in paperwork. She knocked softly on the doorframe, and he looked up, a wary expression crossing his face. "Can we talk?" Sarah asked, stepping into the room. Jonathan nodded, setting his papers aside. "Of course, Sarah. What's on your mind?" Taking a deep breath, Sarah began to recount her visit to the Mission District, describing her meeting with Maria and Carlos. Jonathan listened quietly, his expression unreadable. "I understand why you kept it a secret," Sarah said, her voice trembling slightly. "But they are my family too, and I want to get to know them." Jonathan sighed heavily, rubbing his temples. Sarah, we only wanted what was best for you. Your mother and I thought that cutting ties would give you a better life, free from complications. But it did the opposite, Sarah countered, frustration seeping into her voice. I've always felt like something was missing, and now I know what it is. I need to be a part of their lives. Jonathan looked at her, a mix of concern and resignation in his eyes. I can't stop you, Sarah. But please, be careful. There are reasons we made the decisions we did. With that, Sarah left the study, feeling a mixture of relief and apprehension. Jonathan's reaction was better than she had feared, but the underlying tension was undeniable. Over the next few days, Sarah juggled her time between her adoptive family and her newfound biological family. Each visit to the Mission District brought her closer to Maria and Carlos, deepening their bond. They welcomed her with open arms, eager to make up for lost time. Carlos introduced her to his friends, and Maria shared stories about their family history, filling in the gaps of Sarah's knowledge. However, the more Sarah immersed herself in her biological family's world, the more strained her relationship with Jonathan became. He grew increasingly distant, and their conversations were often filled with unspoken tensions. One evening, as Sarah returned home from another visit with Maria and Carlos, she found Jonathan waiting for her in the living room. His expression was stern, and she could sense the brewing confrontation. Sarah, we need to talk, Jonathan said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Sarah sat down, bracing herself for the discussion. What is it, Dad? I'm worried about you, Jonathan began, his voice filled with concern. You've been spending so much time with them, and I'm afraid you're getting too involved. Your future is here, with us. Don't let their situation drag you down. Sarah's eyes flashed with anger. Their situation? You mean their lives? They are my family, and I won't abandon them just because it's inconvenient for you. Jonathan's face hardened. It's not about convenience, Sarah. It's about protecting you. You don't know what kind of life they lead. We gave you everything to ensure you had a bright future. And you think I can't have a future with them in my life? Sarah shot back, her voice rising. You can't keep me from knowing my own family. I deserve to have both worlds, and I will find a way to make it work. The argument ended with Sarah storming out of the room, her heart pounding. She knew that reconciling these two parts of her life would be a long and painful process, but she was determined to see it through. She would find a way to balance her love for both families, no matter the cost. The tension between Sarah and Jonathan continued to escalate over the following weeks. Sarah's frequent visits to the Mission District became a point of contention in the Thompson household. Jonathan's disapproval was palpable, casting a shadow over their interactions. One evening, after returning from yet another visit with Maria and Carlos, Sarah found Jonathan waiting for her in the dimly lit living room. His face was set in grim determination. Sarah, we need to have a serious conversation, he began, his tone leaving no room for misinterpretation. Sarah sighed, feeling the weight of the inevitable confrontation. What is it, Dad? Jonathan took a deep breath. I can't continue to support your decision to spend so much time with them. It's not healthy for you to be torn between two worlds. Her eyes flashed with defiance. You can't control my life, Jonathan. I'm an adult, and I have the right to know my biological family. Jonathan's expression hardened. This isn't about control. It's about your future. Do you really think you can maintain this double life without consequences? Your mother and I did everything to give you a life of opportunities. Don't throw it away. Sarah felt a surge of anger. You're the one making me choose. Why can't you understand that they are important to me too? Jonathan stood up, his face a mask of frustration. If you continue down this path, you will force my hand, Sarah. I can't support decisions that jeopardize your well-being. The ultimatum hung in the air, heavy and oppressive. Sarah's heart pounded as she realized the full extent of Jonathan's threat. What are you saying? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jonathan's eyes were cold. If you persist in this, I will cut off your financial support. You need to understand the gravity of your choices." Sarah stared at him in disbelief. "You're willing to disown me because I want to know my real family?" Jonathan's silence was answer enough. With tears stinging her eyes, Sarah turned and fled to her room, slamming the door behind her. The confrontation left her shaken, but also resolute. She couldn't allow Jonathan to dictate her life, even if it meant losing the security she had always known. The next day, Sarah met Maria and Carlos at a local cafe in the Mission District. She needed to share the latest development and seek their advice. The cozy, bustling atmosphere of the cafe provided a stark contrast to the cold tension she had left behind. Maria listened intently as Sarah recounted the argument with Jonathan, her eyes filled with concern. "I never wanted this to cause you more pain, Sarah," she said softly. "You don't have to choose between us." Carlos nodded in agreement. "We want to be part of your life, but not at the cost of your happiness and security." Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the love and support from her biological family. "I know. But I can't keep living a lie. I need to find a way to balance both worlds." Over the next few weeks, Sarah made adjustments to her life. She found a part-time job at a local art gallery, using her skills and passion for art to carve out a sense of independence. Her relationship with Maria and Carlos continued to grow, their bond strengthening with each passing day. Meanwhile, her interactions with Jonathan became more strained. They spoke less frequently, the distance between them widening. Sarah felt a pang of sadness for the man who had raised her, but she couldn't back down from her decision. The struggle to maintain balance between her two worlds was daunting, but Sarah remained determined. She knew that the journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but she was ready to face them head-on. Her heart belonged to both families, and she would find a way to honor that truth, no matter the obstacles. Days turned into weeks as Sarah continued to navigate the complexities of her dual existence. Her visits to the Mission District became more frequent, each trip strengthening her bond with Maria and Carlos. She cherished the simplicity of their lives, the warmth and authenticity that contrasted so sharply with the often sterile environment of her adoptive home. One Saturday afternoon, Sarah found herself in Maria's small kitchen, the air filled with the comforting aroma of home-cooked food. Maria was teaching her how to make tamales, a recipe passed down through generations of their family. "Your grandmother taught me this when I was your age," Maria said, her eyes twinkling with nostalgia. "It's a labor of love, but worth every bit of effort." Sarah smiled, her hands busy mixing masa dough. "I love learning about our family's traditions. It makes me feel connected in a way I never imagined." Maria reached out, squeezing Sarah's hand gently. "You are a part of this family, Sarah. Always have been, always will be." Carlos entered the kitchen, a mischievous grin on his face. "Hey, don't forget the music." He placed a small speaker on the counter and started playing lively salsa music. The kitchen instantly transformed into a lively, joyous space. "Come on, Sarah, show us your moves." Carlos laughed, pulling her into an impromptu dance. Sarah laughed, feeling more at ease than she had in a long time. They danced around the kitchen, the music and laughter creating an atmosphere of pure happiness. For a moment, all her worries faded away. As the evening progressed, the small house filled with neighbors and friends. It was a celebration, a welcome home party of sorts for Sarah. She met people who had known her biological family for years, their warmth and acceptance wrapping around her like a comforting blanket. One elderly neighbor, Mrs. Hernandez, pulled Sarah aside. "Your mother never stopped talking about you, Mija. She always hoped you would come back to us." Sarah felt a lump in her throat. "I wish I had known sooner. But I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." Maria and Carlos beamed with pride, watching Sarah integrate so seamlessly into their world. The evening was filled with stories, laughter, and a sense of belonging that Sarah had longed for. Meanwhile, her job at the art gallery was proving to be a rewarding experience. The gallery owner, Mrs. Patel, recognized Sarah's talent and passion for art, giving her more responsibilities and opportunities to showcase her work. "Your paintings have a unique perspective, Sarah," Mrs. Patel commented one afternoon. "They tell a story, one that resonates with many people." Sarah felt a surge of pride. Her art had always been a way to express her deepest emotions, and now it was connecting her to others in ways she hadn't anticipated. Despite the joy and fulfillment she found in the Mission District, the tension with Jonathan remained a constant undercurrent. He rarely spoke to her, their interactions reduced to curt exchanges. Sarah missed the closeness they once shared, but she couldn't compromise her newfound sense of identity. One evening, as Sarah was closing up the gallery, she received a text from Jonathan. "We need to talk. Please come home." The message sent a shiver down her spine. She knew this conversation was inevitable, but the prospect still filled her with dread. Gathering her courage, she made her way back to Pacific Heights. Jonathan was waiting for her in the living room, his expression weary. "Sarah, we can't keep going on like this," he began. "This distance between us, it's tearing me apart." Sarah sat down, her heart aching. "Dad, I never wanted to hurt you. But I can't ignore who I am or where I come from." Jonathan nodded slowly. "I understand that now. I want to be part of your life, all of it. Can we find a way to make this work?" Tears filled Sarah's eyes as she saw the sincerity in Jonathan's gaze. "I'd like that, Dad. We can try." The path ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time, there was a glimmer of hope. Sarah's heart was split between two worlds, but perhaps, just maybe, there was a way to unite them. The fragile truce between Sarah and Jonathan brought a temporary calm to her life, but it was clear that unresolved tensions still lingered beneath the surface. Determined to uncover the full story of her past, Sarah decided to delve deeper into the documents she had found in her mother's belongings. One rainy afternoon, Sarah sat in her room, surrounded by old papers and letters. Among them, she discovered a set of legal documents pertaining to her adoption. As she sifted through the paperwork, one document caught her eye. It was a letter from a lawyer, addressed to Jonathan, detailing the lengths to which he had gone to ensure that Sarah's biological family would not interfere in her life. Sarah's heart pounded as she read the letter. Jonathan had not only facilitated the adoption but had also taken steps to prevent any contact between Sarah and her biological family. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. Jonathan had known all along that her family had wanted to reach out, and he had blocked them. Fury and betrayal surged through her. She needed answers, and she needed them now. Clutching the letter, Sarah stormed into Jonathan's study, where he was working on his laptop. "Care to explain this?" Sarah demanded, slamming the letter down on his desk. Jonathan looked up, his face paling as he recognized the document. "Sarah, I can explain." "Explain what?" she interrupted, her voice trembling with anger. "That you deliberately kept me from my real family? That you lied to me my whole life?" Jonathan stood, his expression a mix of regret and defensiveness. "I did what I thought was best for you. I wanted to protect you from a life of hardship." "Protect me?" Sarah's voice rose. "You stole my chance to know my family, to understand where I come from. How could you do that?" Jonathan took a deep breath, his eyes pleading. "Sarah, I love you. Your mother and I only wanted to give you the best life possible. We thought keeping you away from them was the right decision." "Well, you were wrong," Sarah shot back, tears streaming down her face. "You had no right to make that choice for me." The argument left both of them emotionally drained. Sarah retreated to her room, feeling a sense of isolation and betrayal that cut deeper than ever. She knew she needed space to process everything. The next day, Sarah confided in Maria and Carlos about the latest revelation. They listened with empathy, their own pain resurfacing at the memories of the years they had missed with her. "Your father did what he thought was right," Maria said gently. "But that doesn't excuse his actions. You have every right to be angry." Carlos nodded, his expression serious. "We can't change the past, Sarah. But we can focus on the future. You're here now, and that's what matters. Sarah felt a surge of gratitude for their unwavering support. Despite the pain and betrayal, she knew she had found a place where she truly belonged. Determined to move forward, Sarah threw herself into her work at the gallery. Mrs. Patel, noticing the change in her demeanor, offered her a chance to curate a small exhibition of her own paintings. It was an opportunity Sarah had long dreamed of, and she accepted with enthusiasm. As she worked on the exhibition, Sarah found solace in her art. Each brushstroke became a way to process her emotions, to channel her anger, sadness, and hope into something beautiful. The day of the exhibition arrived, and the gallery buzzed with excitement. Friends, family, and art enthusiasts filled the space, admiring Sarah's work. Maria and Carlos were there, their pride evident in their smiles. Even Jonathan attended, standing at the edge of the crowd, a look of tentative hope in his eyes. Sarah approached him, her heart heavy but resolute. "I can't forgive you yet," she said softly. "But I'm willing to try. We need to rebuild our trust." Jonathan nodded, tears in his eyes. "I understand, Sarah. And I'm here, ready to do whatever it takes." The night ended on a hopeful note, with Sarah feeling a sense of accomplishment and a tentative step towards healing. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, she felt a glimmer of unity between her two worlds. The days following Sarah's exhibition were a whirlwind of emotions. Her paintings had received positive feedback, and she felt a renewed sense of purpose. However, the strained relationship with Jonathan still weighed heavily on her mind. One evening, Sarah received an invitation to the Thompson family's annual gala, a lavish event that drew the elite of San Francisco. She knew this could be an opportunity to address the tension with Jonathan in a public yet controlled setting. With some hesitation, she decided to attend. The night of the gala arrived, and Sarah donned an elegant gown, feeling a mix of anticipation and anxiety. The venue, a grand ballroom adorned with crystal chandeliers and opulent decor, buzzed with conversation and laughter. As she entered, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of displacement. This world of wealth and privilege seemed so distant from the warmth and simplicity of her time with Maria and Carlos. As the evening progressed, Sarah mingled with guests, her mind constantly returning to the impending conversation with Jonathan. Finally, she spotted him across the room, engaged in a conversation with a group of businessmen. Summoning her courage, she approached. "Dad, we need to talk," Sarah said, her voice steady but firm. Jonathan excused himself from the group and turned to Sarah, his expression guarded. "Of course, Sarah. Let's step outside." They made their way to the terrace, the cool night air providing a stark contrast to the warmth of the ballroom. Sarah took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. "Why did you come to the exhibition?" she asked, looking directly into Jonathan's eyes. Jonathan sighed, leaning against the railing. "Because I wanted to support you. I know I've made mistakes, but I still care about you deeply." "Supporting me now doesn't erase the years of lies," Sarah replied, her voice tinged with sadness. "You kept me from my family, from knowing who I truly am." "I understand that you're angry, and you have every right to be," Jonathan said, his voice filled with regret. "But please believe that your mother and I acted out of love." Sarah shook her head, her emotions bubbling to the surface. "Love doesn't justify controlling someone's life. I needed to know the truth, to make my own choices." The tension between them was palpable, and Sarah felt the weight of their shared history pressing down on her. She knew this conversation wouldn't resolve everything, but it was a step towards healing. Jonathan took a deep breath. "I want to make things right, Sarah. I know I can't change the past, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn your forgiveness." Before Sarah could respond, a voice interrupted them. It was Mrs. Patel, the gallery owner, who had been invited to the gala as well. "Sarah, I didn't expect to see you here," Mrs. Patel said, smiling warmly. Sarah forced a smile, appreciating the distraction. "Mrs. Patel, it's good to see you. I wanted to thank you for the opportunity at the gallery." Mrs. Patel nodded, her eyes twinkling with pride. You have a gift, Sarah. Your work resonates with people. I'm glad to have you as part of our team. Jonathan watched the exchange, a thoughtful expression on his face. Sarah, I think you're finding your place in this world, and I'm proud of you for that. The compliment caught Sarah off guard, and for a moment, the animosity between them faded. Thank you, Dad. That means a lot. As the evening continued, Sarah found herself reflecting on the conversation. It wasn't a resolution, but it was a start. The gala ended with a sense of tentative hope, a possibility of bridging the gap between her two worlds. The following day, Sarah visited Maria and Carlos, eager to share the events of the gala. They listened intently, offering their unwavering support and understanding. Jonathan seems to be trying, Sarah, Maria said thoughtfully. Maybe this is a step towards healing. Carlos nodded. It's not going to be easy, but you have us, and we're here for you. Sarah smiled, feeling the warmth of their love. The path ahead was still uncertain, but she felt stronger, knowing she wasn't alone. Her heart was learning to navigate the space between two worlds, finding a way to honor both sides of her identity. As she left their home that evening, Sarah felt a renewed sense of determination. She would continue to pursue her passion for art, to build a life that reflected her true self. The journey was far from over, but she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, with her family, both families, by her side. Despite the tentative steps towards reconciliation with Jonathan, the tension in Sarah's life remained a constant undercurrent. Balancing her time between her two families and her responsibilities at the gallery was proving to be more challenging than she had anticipated. One evening, after a particularly long day at the gallery, Sarah returned to the Thompson mansion to find Jonathan waiting for her in the living room. The look on his face told her that this was not going to be a pleasant conversation. Sarah, we need to talk, he began, his tone serious and somber. Sarah felt a sense of déjà vu as she sat down, bracing herself for the worst. What is it, Dad? Jonathan sighed heavily. I've been speaking with our financial advisors. They believe that your continued association with your biological family is problematic. Sarah's heart sank. Problematic? How? Your public presence, your connections, they reflect on our family. There have been whispers, concerns about your credibility and our reputation, Jonathan explained, his voice strained. Sarah's anger flared. So this is about your reputation? About what people think of you? It's about protecting everything we've built, Jonathan replied, his frustration evident. I can't have our family's name dragged through the mud. Sarah stood up, her emotions boiling over. I'm not going to give up my family because you're worried about appearances. They are a part of me, whether you like it or not. Jonathan's expression hardened. If you continue down this path, Sarah, I will have no choice but to cut you off completely. No more financial support, no more safety net. The ultimatum struck Sarah like a physical blow. She stared at Jonathan, disbelief and hurt written across her face. You're willing to disown me because I want to know my real family? Jonathan remained silent, his gaze unwavering. The message was clear. Her choices had consequences, and he was prepared to enforce them. Feeling a surge of despair, Sarah turned and fled the room. She ran up to her room, her mind racing with the enormity of what had just happened. She felt trapped, torn between two worlds, with no clear path forward. That night, Sarah lay in bed, staring at the ceiling as tears silently streamed down her face. The security and comfort she had always known were slipping away, and she was left with a heart-wrenching decision. She could either abandon her biological family to maintain her lifestyle or embrace her true identity and face an uncertain future. The next morning, Sarah woke up with a sense of resolve. She couldn't allow fear to dictate her choices. She had to stand by her decision, no matter the cost. Gathering her belongings, she packed a suitcase and left a note for Jonathan, explaining that she needed time to think and find her own way. She drove to the Mission District, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. Maria and Carlos welcomed her with open arms, their love and support providing a much-needed balm for her wounded heart. You're always welcome here, Sarah, Maria said, hugging her tightly. We'll get through this together. Sarah spent the next few days immersing herself in the life she was beginning to build with her biological family. She focused on her work at the gallery, pouring her emotions into her art. The small part-time job was now her primary source of income, and while it was a drastic change, she felt a sense of independence and purpose she had never known before. Despite the challenges, Sarah found strength in her connections with Maria and Carlos. They became her anchor, helping her navigate the turbulent waters of her new reality. Each day brought new obstacles, but also moments of joy and growth. Sarah knew the road ahead would be difficult, but she was determined to forge a path that honored both her past and her future. She had chosen to embrace her true self, and with the support of her family, she felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Sarah's new reality was a stark contrast to the life she had known. Gone were the days of luxury and ease, replaced by a more modest but profoundly fulfilling existence. Living with Maria and Carlos, she found comfort in their daily routines and the simplicity of their home. The warmth of their love and support made the sacrifices she had made feel worthwhile. Her job at the art gallery became a cornerstone of her new life. Sarah threw herself into her work, using her art as a means to process her emotions and express her newfound sense of identity. Mrs. Patel, ever supportive, noticed Sarah's dedication and began giving her more responsibilities, including curating small exhibits and managing community outreach programs. One afternoon, as Sarah was organizing an art workshop for local children, Mrs. Patel approached her with a smile. "Sarah, I've been so impressed with your work. I think it's time we hosted an exhibition of your paintings." Sarah's eyes widened in surprise and excitement. "Really? That would be amazing." Mrs. Patel nodded. "You have a unique voice, and your art reflects your journey. I believe it will resonate with many people." The prospect of an exhibition filled Sarah with both anticipation and nerves. She knew it was a significant opportunity to share her story and connect with others through her art. She spent the following weeks preparing, creating new pieces that reflected her experiences and emotions. As the date of the exhibition approached, Sarah felt a growing sense of accomplishment. She was forging a new path, one that combined her passions with her heritage. Despite the challenges, she felt more connected to herself and her family than ever before. The night of the exhibition arrived, and the gallery buzzed with energy. Friends, family, and art enthusiasts filled the space, admiring Sarah's work. Each painting told a part of her story, from the opulent life she had left behind to the humble, loving environment she had embraced. Maria and Carlos stood by her side, their pride evident. "Your work is beautiful, Sarah," Maria said, her eyes shining with tears. "It captures your journey perfectly." Carlos nodded. "You've come so far, sis. We're so proud of you." Even Jonathan attended, standing at the edge of the crowd with a look of tentative hope in his eyes. Sarah approached him, her heart pounding with a mix of emotions. "Dad, I didn't expect to see you here," she said softly. Jonathan smiled, though it was tinged with sadness. "I couldn't miss this. Your work is incredible, Sarah. You've created something truly special." The compliment meant more to Sarah than she could express. "Thank you, Dad. It means a lot to hear you say that." As the evening progressed, Sarah found herself surrounded by support and admiration. The exhibition was a success, and she felt a profound sense of fulfillment. She had created something that reflected her true self and touched the hearts of those who saw it. In the following days, the positive feedback from the exhibition continued to pour in. Sarah's confidence grew, and she began to see a future where she could thrive in both her personal and professional life. She was building a bridge between her two worlds, creating a life that honored both her past and her present. One evening, as Sarah and Maria were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset, Maria spoke. "You know, Sarah, your father has been trying to reach out to you. He's called a few times, asking how you're doing." Sarah nodded, her feelings about Jonathan still conflicted. "I know, Mom. It's hard to trust him after everything. Maria took her hand, her touch gentle and reassuring. Trust takes time to rebuild. But he's trying, and that's a start. Give it time, and be open to the possibility of healing. Sarah knew her mother was right. The road to reconciliation with Jonathan would be long and complicated, but she was willing to take it one step at a time. With each passing day, Sarah felt herself growing stronger. She was forging a path that was uniquely hers, supported by the love and acceptance of her biological family and the gradual reemergence of her relationship with Jonathan. It wasn't an easy journey, but it was one she was determined to navigate with courage and grace. The journey towards reconciliation with Jonathan was a slow and delicate process. Sarah knew that rebuilding trust would take time, and both she and Jonathan had to navigate through a minefield of past hurts and misunderstandings. Despite the challenges, there was a sense of hope that kept her moving forward. One Saturday morning, Sarah decided to take a significant step. She invited Jonathan to the Mission District to meet Maria and Carlos. It was a bold move, but she believed that bridging the gap between her two worlds was essential for true healing. Jonathan arrived at Maria's house with a mixture of apprehension and determination. Sarah greeted him at the door, her smile tentative but genuine. Thanks for coming, Dad. Jonathan nodded, trying to hide his nervousness. Thank you for inviting me, Sarah. I'm ready to meet them. Maria welcomed Jonathan with her characteristic warmth. It's good to finally meet you, Jonathan, she said, extending her hand. I've heard so much about you. Jonathan shook her hand, his grip firm but respectful. Likewise, Maria. Thank you for having me. Carlos joined them, his demeanor open and friendly. Hey, Jonathan. Welcome to our home. As they all settled into the living room, the initial awkwardness began to dissipate. Maria served coffee and homemade pastries, and the conversation started to flow more naturally. They shared stories and memories, finding common ground in their love for Sarah. Jonathan listened attentively as Maria and Carlos recounted their lives and the challenges they had faced. He was particularly moved by Maria's story of giving Sarah up for adoption, understanding for the first time the depth of her sacrifice. I never realized how much you went through, Jonathan said quietly, his eyes meeting Maria's. I'm sorry for any pain my actions caused. Maria smiled gently. We all did what we thought was best for Sarah. What matters now is that we're here, trying to make things right. Sarah felt a surge of gratitude for both her families. This moment, though simple, represented a significant step towards unity and understanding. In the weeks that followed, Jonathan made a conscious effort to connect with Maria and Carlos. He visited more often, joining them for family dinners and community events. Slowly, the walls between them began to crumble. One evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Carlos brought out his guitar and began to play a soft melody. Sarah watched as Jonathan listened, a look of genuine appreciation on his face. You play beautifully, Carlos, Jonathan remarked. Music has always been a big part of our family too. Rebecca loved the piano. Carlos smiled. Maybe we can play together sometime. I'd love to hear more about your musical traditions. The exchange filled Sarah with hope. These small moments of connection were building a bridge between her two worlds, creating a new, blended family dynamic. As the months passed, Sarah continued to thrive in her work at the gallery. Her paintings gained recognition, and she was invited to participate in larger exhibitions. Her art became a medium for healing and expression, reflecting the complex and beautiful journey she was on. One day, after a successful gallery opening, Sarah received a call from Jonathan. Sarah, I wanted to tell you how proud I am of you, he said, his voice filled with emotion. You've grown into an incredible woman, and I'm honored to be your father. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes. Thank you, Dad. Your support means everything to me. The road to reconciliation was long and filled with challenges, but Sarah felt a profound sense of peace. She had managed to unite the fragments of her life into a cohesive whole, honoring both her adoptive and biological families. Sarah knew there would still be difficulties ahead, but she was ready to face them with the love and support of those she held dear. Her journey had taught her the power of forgiveness, the importance of understanding, and the strength found in embracing her true self. The successful gallery opening marked a turning point in Sarah's life. It symbolized not only her artistic growth, but also the healing and unity she had worked so hard to achieve. With the support of both her biological and adoptive families, Sarah felt ready to embark on new beginnings. One crisp autumn morning, Sarah stood on the porch of Maria's house, looking out at the neighborhood that had become so dear to her. The leaves were turning vibrant shades of red and gold, signaling a season of change. Maria joined her, carrying 2 steaming mugs of coffee. "What's on your mind, Sarah?" Maria asked, handing her a mug. Sarah took a sip, savoring the warmth. "I've been thinking about the future, about how I want to contribute to this community. I want to give back, just like you've always done." Maria smiled, her eyes filled with pride. "That's wonderful, Sarah. What do you have in mind?" "I've been talking with Mrs. Patel," Sarah began, her excitement growing. "She and I are planning to start an outreach program at the gallery, offering art classes and workshops for local kids. It's a way to nurture their creativity and provide them with opportunities they might not otherwise have." Maria's smile widened. "That's a beautiful idea, Sarah. I'm so proud of you." The outreach program quickly took shape, and Sarah threw herself into the project with enthusiasm. She worked tirelessly, coordinating with local schools and community centers, spreading the word about the free art classes. The response was overwhelmingly positive, and soon the gallery was buzzing with young artists, eager to learn and create. Jonathan, ever supportive, offered to sponsor the program, providing funds for art supplies and materials. "It's the least I can do," he said when Sarah thanked him. "I want to be part of this positive change." As the program flourished, Sarah found herself surrounded by a new sense of community. The children, with their boundless energy and creativity, inspired her in ways she had never imagined. She saw reflections of herself in their eager faces, each brushstroke a testament to their potential. One evening, after a particularly successful workshop, Sarah sat down with Carlos and Jonathan. They had developed a surprising camaraderie, bonding over their shared love of music. Jonathan had even taken up playing the piano again, his fingers finding familiar melodies as Carlos accompanied him on guitar. "You know," Carlos said, strumming a gentle tune, "we should have a family music night. Invite everyone and just play and sing together." Jonathan nodded, a smile playing on his lips. "I think that's a wonderful idea. Music has a way of bringing people together." Sarah's heart swelled with joy. The idea of blending their musical traditions and creating new memories filled her with a deep sense of fulfillment. She realized that her journey had come full circle. She was not just navigating 2 worlds, she was uniting them. The first family music night was a resounding success. Maria cooked a feast, and the house was filled with laughter and song. Friends and neighbors joined in, the living room transforming into a vibrant celebration of unity and love. As Sarah watched Jonathan and Carlos play a duet, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. Her life was a tapestry of experiences and relationships, each thread adding to its richness and beauty. She had learned to embrace her dual heritage, finding strength in her roots and joy in her connections. Sarah's heart was full, knowing that she had created a life that honored both her past and her present. She had found her place, not just between 2 worlds, but within a united family, bonded by love, understanding, and the shared belief in a hopeful future. Months passed, and the outreach program at the gallery became a cornerstone of the community, enriching the lives of countless children. Sarah's paintings continued to gain recognition, her unique perspective resonating deeply with art lovers and critics alike. Her life was a beautiful blend of creativity, family, and community, each day a testament to her journey of self-discovery and reconciliation. One sunny afternoon, Sarah received an unexpected letter in the mail. It was addressed to her, but the handwriting was unfamiliar. Curiosity piqued, she carefully opened the envelope and began to read. Dear Sarah, I hope this letter finds you well. My name is Elena, and I am a distant relative of your biological family. I recently discovered some old family documents that I believe might interest you. They contain details about your heritage and stories of your ancestors that I think you would find meaningful. I would love to share them with you if you're interested. Warm regards, Elena Rodriguez. Sarah's heart raced as she read the letter. The possibility of uncovering more about her roots and learning new facets of her family's history excited her. She immediately wrote back, eager to meet this new relative and delve deeper into her ancestry. A few weeks later, Sarah and Elena met at a cozy cafe in the Mission District. Elena was an elderly woman with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor. She brought with her a box filled with old photographs, letters, and documents. These were passed down through generations, Elena explained. They tell the stories of our family's journey, the hardships they faced, and the dreams they pursued. As Sarah pored over the contents of the box, she felt a profound connection to her ancestors. The stories of resilience, love, and determination mirrored her own journey. It was a reminder of the strength and courage that flowed through her veins, a legacy she was proud to carry forward. The discovery of her extended family's history added a new layer of depth to Sarah's understanding of herself. She shared the stories with Maria, Carlos, and even Jonathan, bridging the past with the present in a way that brought them all closer together. One evening, as the sun set over the San Francisco skyline, Sarah stood on the porch of Maria's house, reflecting on her journey. The vibrant colors of the sunset reminded her of the vivid tapestry of her life, woven with threads of love, struggle, and triumph. Jonathan joined her, a contented smile on his face. You've come a long way, Sarah. I'm so proud of you. Sarah smiled, feeling a deep sense of peace. Thank you, Dad. I couldn't have done it without the support of both my families. As they stood together, watching the sky turn from orange to pink to deep blue, Sarah felt a profound sense of gratitude. Her journey had been filled with challenges, but it had also brought her to a place of unity and understanding. She knew there would always be more to learn, more stories to uncover, and more connections to build. But for now, she was content, surrounded by the love of her family and the fulfillment of living a life true to herself. Sarah had found her place, not just between two worlds, but within a united, loving family. Her heart was whole, and her future was bright, filled with endless possibilities and the promise of new beginnings.